Yes, I'm sure. He's been watching me. I don't care what the rules say. Just get someone here now!
That's the 911 call. That's what the HOA president told dispatch at 4:18 on a Tuesday. 2 patrol officers responded. They drove up the cul-de-sac, parked at the curb, and walked up the front path. The man she'd called about opened his door. Both officers froze. Then they snapped to attention. Then they saluted. The senior officer said,
Chief Caldwell, we didn't realize this was your residence, sir.
Brittany Stansbury Hawes had spent 8 months calling me anti-community, antisocial, and dangerous. For one reason, I had politely refused to take a free gas card from her husband's company. What she didn't know was that I was the new chief of police. The Financial Crimes Unit had already opened a quiet investigation into her free gas program. Every officer in this city would have walked through fire for me. Tell me, what would you have done? 18 months ago, I accepted an offer that took me out of Memphis, away from the city where my K-9 partner had died, and into a smaller town that I hoped would let me breathe. The city was Hartsfield Springs, Tennessee, population just under 25,000, tucked into the rolling green hills south of Nashville. The job was chief of police, my first appointment after 25 years on the Memphis force, and I had taken it for one specific reason that had nothing to do with rank. 5 years before, in a methamphetamine lab raid on the edge of Whitehaven, a length of triple tripwire and a propane bomb had killed my dog. Ranger was a Belgian Malinois I had trained from a pup, partnered with for 9 years, and loved like family. The shrapnel from the same blast took a piece out of my left shoulder and a bigger piece out of my sleep schedule. My name is Walker Caldwell. I'm 51 years old, divorced amicably from a woman named Linnea who lives in Chattanooga now and still sends me a Christmas card every year, and the father of a 19-year-old criminal justice student at the University of Tennessee. His name is Sawyer. He is taller than me, smarter than me, and infinitely better at small talk than I have ever been. Sawyer chose the house with me. Hartsfield Ridge, a brand new master-planned community on the south edge of town. 247 homes arranged in cul-de-sacs around a man-made lake, 2 community pools, a clubhouse with stamped Spanish tile, the kind of place where every mailbox is the same color and every lawn is mowed on Tuesdays. I chose it because I wanted to be invisible. I did not tell my new neighbors I was the new chief. I did not put a department sticker on my F-15. Oh, I did not park a marked unit in my driveway. I wore plain clothes to and from work. I drove an unmarked dark blue truck with civilian plates. I introduced myself to the people on either side as Walker, just Walker, and told them I worked in city government. Both of them assumed I meant zoning. That suited me fine. After Ranger, after the divorce, after a year on light duty, I wanted a year of being nobody. I wanted to come home to a quiet street, a clean garage, and a son who showed up most Friday nights with laundry and an appetite for barbecue. I got about 6 weeks. The first knock came on a Saturday morning in October. I was on the porch with coffee when a white Lincoln Navigator pulled into my driveway, and a blonde woman in a coral linen jacket stepped out holding a small wicker basket. She was 53 or so, heavyset under the linen, polished in the way some women polish themselves when they want you to know that polish is part of their authority. She walked up like she'd done it 100 times. "You must be Walker. I'm Brittany Stansbury Hawes, president of the Hartsfield Ridge Homeowners Association. I brought you cookies and a very special welcome gift." The cookies were lemon shortbread. The welcome gift was a glossy plastic card the color of a dark green olive, with the Sunfield Energy logo embossed on the front. "It's our community loyalty fuel card," she said. 30 cents off a gallon and 10 free gallons every month at any Sunfield station. My husband Greg runs the regional office. It's our little gift to the neighborhood. Every household has one. Just sign this form and you're activated. I looked at the card. I looked at the form. The form had a long block of fine print authorizations at the bottom that included data sharing language I didn't have time to read on a porch with a stranger. "That's very kind," I said. "I'll think about it. Could I keep the form and the card and read through it tonight?" Her smile slipped about a 1/16 of an inch. "Of course, just bring it back by Monday." I never brought it back. She came back on Monday. She came back on Wednesday. She came back the following Saturday. By the third visit, her voice had a slight edge under the politeness, the way good cookware has a slight ring under the enamel. "Walker," she said, "I noticed you haven't activated your fuel card." "I haven't, no." "Is there a problem with the program?" "Not at all. I just don't carry many loyalty cards. I prefer cash. She stared at me for a long second. Then she said, brightly, well, every other household in Hartsfield Ridge participates, 246 of them. You'd be the only one who isn't part of our community discount. I'll be fine. You understand that the program is how we keep our HOA dues low. I understand the dues. I read the breakdown. That was the moment her face changed for the first time. Just a flicker, the faintest tightening at the corners of the mouth, the way a tide pulls back before it shows you what was underneath. I would later come to recognize that flicker the way a cop recognizes a man patting his waistband. Of course, she said. She turned, walked back to the navigator, and drove away. The next morning, a violation notice was clipped to my mailbox. The notice cited my front lawn for failing to meet the community's manicured aesthetic standard, and listed 3 specific issues. The grass was 4 inches tall. The grass was, in fact, 3.5 inches tall. I had measured it the previous Saturday with a metal ruler because I am the kind of man who measures things. The second issue was that my hedge along the walkway was encroaching on the sidewalk easement by approximately 2 inches. The hedge had been trimmed by the developer 11 days earlier and had not, in 11 days, grown 2 inches. The third issue was that I had failed to display a community-approved mailbox flag. The fine was $75. I took the notice down, folded it, and put it in a manila folder marked HR-HOA in my home office. I had learned the value of folders in Memphis. I had testified in 73 civil rights cases over the years, and in every one of them, the side with the better folder had won. A week later, a second notice appeared. This one cited my truck for exceeding the height standard for residential driveways. My F-150 is a stock height crew cab. It does not exceed any height standard known to physics or to Ford Motor Company. The fine was $120. I added it to the folder. A week after that, a third notice. My porch chairs were non-compliant with the neighborhood color palette. Sawyer was home for Thanksgiving when the fourth notice came. He picked it off the mailbox, read it on the walk up the driveway, and started laughing before he reached the porch. Dad, she's writing you up for the wreath. What's wrong with the wreath? Apparently the bow is too red. He came up the steps still chuckling. He's a good-looking kid. His mother's curly black hair and my serious gray eyes, 6'2" and built like a runner. He flopped into the porch chair Brittany had cited a week earlier and held the notice up to the light. What's the fine? $50. Are you going to pay it? No. Are you going to write her back? No. What are you going to do? I sipped my coffee. The cardinal that had been working the bird feeder all morning flicked off the perch and disappeared into the pine. I'm going to wait, I said. I'm going to put every one of these in a folder, and then, when the folder is heavy enough, I'm going to find out what she's actually after. Sawyer looked at me for a long moment over the top of the notice. Dad, he said, are you in chief mode right now? I'm in dad mode, with chief mode running in the background. Okay. He folded the notice, set it on the porch table, and didn't ask me about it again. That's the thing about raising a kid right. By 19, they know which questions to leave alone. That night, after Sawyer went to bed, I drove down to the Sunfield station at the corner of Marigold and 6th and pumped $20 of gas using a debit card linked to a Memphis credit union. I paid the full price. No discount, no card. I watched the receipts print. I watched the cameras. I watched the small placard taped inside the front door that said, "We proudly partner with Hartsfield Ridge HOA." I had a strong feeling about that placard. It would take me 4 more months to find out I was right. The new year started with 2 patrol officers on my porch. Not officers from my own department, Williamson County Sheriff's deputies. A young black deputy named Deshaun Whitlock and an older white deputy named Ed Pruitt I had met twice at intergovernmental meetings. Ed recognized me the instant the door opened. He did a half-second double take, recovered like a professional, and lowered his clipboard. It's Chief Caldwell. Ed, good to see you. Deshaun's eyes flicked to Ed, then to me, then back to Ed. He did the math very quickly. Sir, he said, we're sorry to bother you. We received a complaint that you have unmarked law enforcement equipment on your residential vehicle and may be impersonating a police officer. I almost laughed. I did not laugh. I put on the patient face I use with city council. That's an unusual complaint. Would you like to look at the truck? Please. I led them to the driveway. The F-150 sat in the morning sun, civilian plates, no decals, no light bar, no antenna. The only equipment on it was a Garmin GPS and a $15 dash cam. Deshaun looked at it for 10 seconds. Ed looked at it for 5. They glanced at each other. "Hi, Chief," Ed said, "who filed this complaint. I have a guess. Mind sharing? The president of my homeowners association, Brittany Stansbury Hawes. She's been writing me up for lawn violations since October. I declined to participate in her husband's gas card program, and she has taken it personally." Deshaun closed his notebook with a quiet click. Ed exhaled. "Sir," Ed said, "I'm going to make a recommendation. With your permission, I'd like to mark this report as unfounded, with a note that the complainant should be advised against further frivolous filings, and I'd like to leave a courtesy copy of the report with you." "That's very kind. Yes to both." He scribbled, he nodded, they left. I stood in the driveway with the morning cold on my forearms and a cup of coffee getting cold on the porch rail behind me. Across the street, 2 doors down, Brittany Stansbury Hawes was standing on her own porch in a salmon bathrobe, holding a phone, watching the deputies pull away. She had been watching the whole time. She lifted a hand in a small, queenly wave. I did not wave back. That afternoon, I did something I had been quietly resisting for 4 months. I sat down at my home office desk with a notepad and started writing down everything I knew. I wrote down the dates of every visit she'd made to my porch. I wrote down the language she'd used about every household participates and how we keep our HOA dues low. I wrote down the 7 violation notices in my folder. I wrote down the false impersonation report. I wrote down the Sunfield placard at the gas station. Then I drew a small triangle in the margin. I labeled the 3 points: HOA, Sunfield Energy, Stansbury Hawes family. I sat there for 10 minutes looking at the triangle. Then I drove to the Williamson County Courthouse and quietly filed a public records request under the Tennessee Public Records Act for 2 specific documents. The first was every monthly financial filing the Hartsfield Ridge HOA had made with the county in the last 5 years. The second was the registration paperwork for any LLC that listed Brittany Stansbury Hawes or Gregory Stansbury Hawes as a member. The clerk, a soft-spoken woman in her 60s named Lorraine Pettigrew, processed my request without blinking. She told me she'd have them ready in 4 working days. "Chief," she added, just as I was turning to leave. "Yes, ma'am? Is this related to anything we should be aware of at the county level?" I looked at her. Small towns are like that. The clerk knows, the clerk always knows. "Not yet," I said, "but possibly soon." She slid a yellow post-it across the counter. On it, in pencil, she had written 1 word: Magnolia. "Excuse me?" "The Shell LLC you'll be looking for. Magnolia Marketing Concepts. Filed in 2020. Sole member, Brittany Stansbury Hawes. It moves a lot of money for a marketing concept." I stared at the post-it. "Lorraine," I said. "Yes, Chief." "How long have you been waiting for somebody to ask?" She looked up at me through her bifocals. The corner of her mouth lifted maybe a 1/4 inch. 18 months. I drove home with the post-it in my front pocket and a feeling in my chest I had not felt in 5 years. The feeling a hunter gets when a track comes off a rumor and turns into a real trail in the dirt. Lorraine had the records ready in 3 days, not 4. She also had a second favor for me that she hadn't mentioned on Monday. "Chief," she said, handing me a thick envelope. "There's something inside the folder I added. You didn't ask for it, but I think you should look at page 11. The folder contained the HOA's quarterly filings, which were public, and the Magnolia Marketing Concepts LLC registration, which was also public. Page 11 was a photocopy of a single page of Sunfield Energy's regional vendor disclosure to the Tennessee Department of Revenue. It was technically restricted information. Lorraine had not technically given it to me. The page that did not technically exist showed that Sunfield Energy had paid Magnolia Marketing Concepts LLC $348,000 over 4 years for community engagement consulting services. Everspo, $348,000. I sat in the parking lot of the county courthouse for 10 minutes reading and rereading the document. Then I drove back to my own office. The Hartsfield Springs Police Department occupies the 3rd floor of a small brick municipal building, 2 blocks from the town square. My corner office looks out across the parking lot toward a hardware store and a bakery that has been making the same biscuits since 1962. I closed the door, sat at my desk, and pulled up the HOA filings on the desktop. The pattern was not subtle. It was elegant, the way a well-built scam is elegant. Every household in Hartsfield Ridge paid $420 a month in HOA dues. Buried in the dues, on a line labeled Community Sunfield Partnership Assessment Fee, was an additional $35. Every house, every month. Whether or not the household actually used a Sunfield community card. 247 homes, $35 per month. That was $8,645 per month from the development. $103,740 per year, just from the assessment. The assessment went into the HOA General Fund. From the HOA General Fund, it was paid out to Magnolia Marketing Concepts, LLC, as a Community Marketing Partnership Consulting Fee in monthly installments of approximately $8,000. Magnolia Marketing Concepts, LLC, then paid Brittany Stansbury Hawes a salary of approximately $78,000 a year. The remaining money, and there was a lot of remaining money because Sunfield's separate consulting payments came in on top of the HOA flow, went to a household checking account jointly held by Brittany and Greg. I leaned back in my chair. I looked out the window. The bakery awning was sagging a little under the morning's first light snow. I picked up the phone. Detective Brennan. Detective Holland Brennan runs my financial crimes unit. She is 43, a quiet woman with sandy hair pulled into a permanent low ponytail, and a former forensic accountant who came to law enforcement after 12 years auditing federal contractors in Knoxville. She is the most patient interrogator I have ever worked with. She once made a mortgage broker cry by simply asking him to walk her through a spreadsheet. "Chief, are you busy?" "No, sir." "Come up. I have something I need you to look at. Bring your coffee." She was in my office in 3 minutes. I slid the folder across the desk. She read it without speaking for 11 minutes. When she finished, she closed the folder very carefully and set her coffee down. "Walker." "Yes." "This is your homeowners association." "Yes." "This is the woman who has been writing you up for your wreath bow." "Yes." "You realize that if we move on this, you are going to be a witness. You may also be a victim. Your name will be in the file, and eventually, in a courtroom." "I know." "You're sure?" "Holland," I said. "She has been quietly stealing $35 a month from 12 elderly homeowners in our city who don't even drive. They have been paying her every month for 4 years for a discount on a gas card they never use. I want you to read me the names of those 12 homeowners." She opened the folder again. She found the page. She read me the 12 names. 3 of them were widows in their 80s. One was a Vietnam-era Navy chief named Roger Halstead, who lived alone with an oxygen tank. One was a woman named Eleanor Sutton, who had taught me at Sunday school when I was 8 years old in Memphis, and had retired to Hartsfield Ridge 2 years ago. I closed my eyes for a moment, then I opened them. "Open the case," I said. "Yes, sir." Quietly. "Yes, sir." "I want to know everything before she knows anything." "Yes, sir." She picked up her coffee, picked up the folder, and walked out of my office. That night I called Sawyer. "Hey, Dad?" "Hey, buddy, got a minute?" "Sure." "How would you feel about coming home a few weekends in a row? I might need a second pair of eyes on a porch." There was a pause on the other end. "Dad," he said, "is this the wreath lady?" "It's the wreath lady." He laughed quietly, then he stopped laughing. "I'll be there Friday." Holland's investigation widened faster than either of us expected. She started with the 12 elderly homeowners. She interviewed each one in plain clothes on quiet weekday afternoons. Every single one of them, when shown their HOA statement, expressed the surprise and quiet embarrassment that elderly people often show when they discover they have been robbed by someone they trusted. None had ever used a Sunfield community card. None had ever signed the authorization. Several had asked Brittany about the $35 line item and been told, in Brittany's polished voice, that it was a neighborhood beautification offset and was non-negotiable. Then Holland turned her attention to the card itself. Here is the thing about loyalty programs. The card is rarely the product. The data is the product. The 30 cents off a gallon is bait. What the company actually collects when you swipe that card at the pump is a continuous data feed, where you bought fuel, when, in what quantity, attached to a license plate they already photographed by ALPR camera in the lot, attached to your home address from the original sign-up form. That data is sold to data brokers, insurance underwriters, and analytics firms. If you ever wonder why a gas station offers you a free card, that is the answer. Sunfield Energy had been doing this for years across every state where it operated. Hartsfield Ridge was a pilot for a specific HOA bundled sign-up model. The community-level sign-up gave Sunfield a clean data set, a tight demographic, and a near 100% participation rate because every household was effectively pre-enrolled via the dues structure. The pilot was being run, on the Sunfield side, by Greg Stansbury Hawes. He was not a regional store manager, as Brittany had told people. He was regional vice president of customer acquisition for the Mid-South. The Hartsfield Ridge program was his project, his bonus structure, and his career. Holland brought all of this to me in a stack of printouts on a Friday afternoon. She also brought the federal layer. The Sunfield is already on a federal radar, she said. For what? Tax fraud. Different case. Different unit. But the FBI's white-collar field office in Nashville has been quietly looking at how Sunfield books its community partnership expenses across multiple states. 43 HOA contracts like ours. 43 Brittany's. Total annual flow in the low 8 figures. You called Nashville. Yesterday, they asked if we had a state-level predicate we could move on first. Theft, wire fraud, filing false statements. Anything that opens a search warrant on the Stansbury Hawes computers and gives them a federal handoff. Do we have that? Walker, I have 12 sworn statements. I have a public records trail showing assessment money paid to a shell LLC controlled by the woman who structured the program. I have evidence that her husband lied about his title in public neighborhood meetings. I have your Wreathbow notice and 7 others like it as harassment context. That's enough. It is enough. The FBI will take the handoff the day we move. I looked out my office window. The bakery awning had been replaced that week. The new canvas was the color of fresh butter. How long do we sit on this? Until she does one more stupid thing. I almost laughed. Holland, I said. She always does. The next 10 weeks were the strangest of my professional life. I was simultaneously the chief of police of a small Tennessee city, the head of a quietly opened financial crimes investigation, and the man getting fined for his porch chairs. I kept all 3 roles separate. At work, I let Holland run the investigation. I stayed out of the daily detail because I would eventually be a witness, and I did not want to taint the chain of custody by being too close. Holland worked the case in plain clothes, often after hours, often from her own kitchen table with her cat on her shoulder. At home, I kept absorbing the notices. By the end of January, the folder on my desk held 19 of them. The fines were now, in theory, over $1,200. I had not paid a cent. I had not appealed a single one. I had not even responded. If you ever want to drive a controller absolutely insane, here is the trick that has worked for me. Don't argue, don't defend, don't engage, document. The thing controllers feed on is your reaction. When you stop reacting, they have to escalate to get the dose they need. And escalation in a courtroom is called pattern. That is what I was waiting for, pattern. Sawyer came up most weekends. He drove the 4 hours from Knoxville every other Friday in his old Tacoma, slept on the couch, helped me move boxes in the garage, ate 3 pounds of barbecue, and asked occasional questions that always landed somewhere unexpected. Dad, he said one Saturday afternoon, while we were trimming the hedge to 1.5 inches under any conceivable definition of encroachment. What's her endgame, you think? She doesn't have one. She's not playing chess. She's playing whack-a-mole. She wants the discomfort to be too high for me to keep refusing. And if it gets too high, it won't. He nodded. He picked up another twig. And Dad, yeah, you ever think about telling her you're the chief? Every day. Why don't you? I leaned on the hedge trimmer. The pine smell was strong in the cold air, the way it gets when the sap is moving even in winter. Because the moment she finds out who I am, she stops doing whatever stupid thing she was about to do that we need her to do. Sawyer looked at me with the same expression his mother used to get, the slight tilt of the head that meant she was deciding whether to say what she was thinking. He decided. Dad, he said, you were setting a trap with yourself as the bait. Yes, son. Is that a problem? No, he said. I just think Mom would think it was very dad of you. I laughed. Meanwhile, Holland was doing real work. She visited every one of the 12 elderly homeowners a second time. She took formal sworn statements with 2 witnesses each. She brought in a deputy district attorney named Bryant Coulter to read the statements and bless them as charging documents. She subpoenaed the HOA's bank records via Davidson County, since the HOA banked at a Nashville credit union. She built a spreadsheet that tracked, line by line, every Magnolia Marketing Concepts LLC transaction for 4 years, cross-referenced to Sunfield Energy corporate disbursements, cross-referenced to the Stansbury Hawes household checking account. The spreadsheet was 47 pages long when she printed it. I have it framed on my office wall now, behind glass, next to a photograph of Ranger. In late February, she brought it to me on a Tuesday morning. Bryant Coulter was with her. "Chief," Bryant said, "we're ready to charge." "What are the charges?" "State level. Theft over $10,000, 8 counts. Wire fraud, 3 counts. 2 counts of filing false statements with the Tennessee Department of Revenue. Plus, we're handing the FBI everything we have on Sunfield by the end of the week." "And Brittany?" "Conspiracy. All 8 theft counts, 2 counts of fraudulent inducement. Greg goes federal. That's the FBI's case to make." "How long until arrest warrant?" "Indorn digibond in rito." 2 weeks. We're waiting on one last subpoena returned from the bank." I sat with it. Bryant Holland. "Yes, Chief. I am still wearing plain clothes in my own neighborhood. She does not know I am the chief. 2 more weeks of pattern. If she escalates again, if she does anything truly stupid, we add that count." Bryant nodded slowly. "Walker," he said, "she has been writing you up for porch chairs. She is going to keep escalating because that is what these people always do." "I know. You may end up with a 911 call on your hands before this is over." "I'm counting on it." He looked at me a long time, then he half smiled. "You know," he said, "you really are a strange kind of cop." "Yes, I am." They left. That weekend, Sawyer drove home, and we put new house numbers on the porch. Community-approved color, community-approved typeface. He took a picture of them and texted it to Brittany's HOA reporting line with the caption, "Now in compliance. Have a blessed evening." She did not write him up. She wrote me up the next morning for having a porch number installed without prior approval. Fine, $90. Sawyer laughed for 10 minutes. I added it to the folder. She started using the public Facebook group in March. The group, called Hartsfield Ridge Neighbors, had 718 members. It was moderated by Brittany and 3 of her hand-picked board members. The pinned post at the top was a glowing description of the Sunfield Community Loyalty Program. The community standards prohibited negative commentary about HOA programs. I had never posted in the group. Sawyer had never posted in the group. Brittany, I would later learn, had been posting about me in the group since November. The first post I saw was forwarded to me by a neighbor named Wendell Cottrell, a retired airline mechanic who lived 3 doors down. He sent me a screenshot at 7:30 on a Tuesday morning. "Walker," his text said, "I think you ought to see this. Wendell." The screenshot was a long, careful, polite-sounding post from Brittany's account. It described a new resident on White Hill Place, me, my block, who had refused all participation in community life, had stockpiled antagonistic correspondence with the association, had engaged in suspicious behavior, including operating an unregistered vehicle with possible law enforcement modifications, and who may pose an emotional or physical risk to neighbors. It encouraged residents to document any unusual interactions and report concerning behavior to local authorities. The post had 403 likes, 217 comments. Several women I had never met posted that they were uncomfortable living near me. One long defense of me, signed Wendell Cottrell, had been deleted by the moderators. I sent the screenshots to Holland. "Walker," she said when she called me back at 8:15. "She just put libel in writing in a public forum that she controls. Bryant is going to add a count." "Add it." "You want to respond?" "No." "Why not?" "Because I want her to keep posting." That afternoon, Brittany filed a formal HOA complaint against me with the management company, demanding a hearing, a fine of $2,500, and a ban from the community pool, the clubhouse, and the lake. I read it twice. I added it to the folder. I made copies for Holland and Bryant. Then she did something I genuinely did not see coming. She filed a small claims lawsuit against me in Williamson County General Sessions Court. The suit demanded $11,400 in unpaid fines and associated administrative damages. It was signed by her personally, under penalty of perjury, in her capacity as HOA president, Holland nearly choked on her coffee when I showed her. All Walker, she just signed a sworn legal document attesting to amounts she's been embezzling. Yes. She put her name on it, under penalty of perjury, in Tennessee. Yes. Chief, Holland said very slowly, I think she just gave us count 9. I retained an attorney that week, a calm older woman in Franklin named Constance Whitfield, who had once been a federal prosecutor and now did civil defense for 38 years. She filed an answer that was 3 pages of mild, polite, devastating denials. Constance wrote the way fly fishermen tie knots. The case was scheduled for May. Meanwhile, Brittany kept escalating. In late March, she stationed herself at the entrance of the community pool one afternoon and physically attempted to bar me from entering on the grounds that I was under formal community review. Sawyer was with me. He has, since he was about 9 years old, possessed the calmest response to grown-up nonsense of any human I have ever known. Ma'am, he said politely, are you the HOA president? Yes. You aren't an officer of the law, are you? I am the elected representative of this community, and are you an officer of the law? No, Then please move aside, ma'am. We'd like to use the pool we paid for. He smiled. He walked past her with 2 towels under his arm. I followed. She turned a color of red I have only seen once or twice in 25 years of policing. On people who were about to do something they would deeply regret. That night, Holland called me at home. Walker. Yes? The bank subpoena came back. We can move. How fast can Bryant pull a warrant? For her arrest, 48 hours. Hold it. Why, she's going to do one more thing. I can feel it. Give her 72 hours. There was a long pause on the other end. Sir, Holland said finally, if you say so. I said so. 72 hours later, she called 911 on me. It was a Tuesday afternoon in early April. The dogwoods on White Hill Place were just starting to bloom, the kind of pinkish white that only Middle Tennessee gets right. I was on my porch with a paperback I'd been meaning to finish for 3 weeks. The book was a Civil War cavalry biography. The coffee was cold, the afternoon was perfect. At 4:11, my Ring camera notification chimed on my phone. I glanced at it. A white Lincoln Navigator was rolling slowly past my driveway. The driver, Brittany, was on her cell phone. She was speaking emphatically. She did not look up at the porch. The Ring camera does not record audio at that range. I would not learn what she was saying in real time. I would learn it from the 911 transcript 6 days later. The call lasted 3 minutes and 41 seconds. The dispatcher's name was Lacey Burnham. She has worked for our department for 9 years. She is good at what she does. In the call, Brittany identified herself as the HOA president of Hartsfield Ridge. She reported that she had just driven past the home of a resident at 117 White Hill Place, who, she said, was stalking residents in the cul-de-sac and screaming. She added, without prompting from Lacey, that the resident may have a weapon visible on his person, and that he has been threatening people for months. She described me as an unstable, possibly armed man who had been harassing the community for half a year. She demanded immediate response. She asked specifically that officers approach with caution. She used the phrase, active threat to family safety. Then she hung up. Lacey ran the call through dispatch protocol and assigned 2 patrol officers, Officer Quentin Pratt and Officer Tasha Marbury, the closest unit. Quentin is a 34-year-old former military police sergeant with 7 years on the Hartsfield Springs force. Tasha is 29, a graduate of the Academy class of 2021, soft-spoken, and one of the sharpest patrol officers I have ever supervised. They were on a routine traffic detail 2 miles from Hartsfield Ridge. They acknowledged the call. They rolled. Lacey, in the dispatch room, ran the address through the resident lookup system. Then Lacey froze for about 4 seconds. Then Lacey did something that took the kind of professional discipline I will never stop respecting. She radioed Quentin and Tasha and said in a perfectly level voice, "Be advised, the residence is 117 White Hill Place. Approach with normal protocol. The reporting party is not, repeat not, a verified eyewitness. Welfare check only." Quentin and Tasha did not connect the address to their chief. They pulled up to the curb at 418. I watched them park from my porch. I closed the book. I set the coffee down. I stood up. Brittany was already at the foot of my driveway, leaning on the mailbox, arms folded across a pale green spring blazer, smile on her face like a child watching the very moment a piñata is about to break. Quentin and Tasha walked up the front path. I opened the door before they reached it. I was in jeans, a gray Henley, and house socks. No badge, no sidearm. I had been reading a paperback. Both of them froze in mid-step. Quentin recovered first. He was 3/4 through a, "Sir, we received a," before his brain finished processing my face. Then his face did a thing I have seen on the faces of young officers exactly twice in my career. A kind of micro-expression of impossible math, instantly resolved into protocol. He snapped to attention. So did Tasha, half a beat behind. They saluted. "Chief Caldwell," Quentin said. "We didn't realize this was your residence, sir." Brittany's smile collapsed in 3 stages. First the corners, then the eyes. Then everything around the mouth fell at once, as if someone had untied a string. She took 1 step back from the mailbox. I came down off the porch in my house socks and stood on the bottom step. "Officers," I said, "stand easy. Come on up to the porch. There's coffee." Quentin looked at Tasha. Tasha looked at Quentin. They came up the steps. I directed them to the 2 non-compliant chairs Brittany had once cited me for. Brittany was still at the mailbox. Her phone, the one she had used to call 911, was still in her hand. I looked at her over the porch rail. I did not raise my voice. "Ma'am," I said, "would you mind staying right where you are for a few minutes? Officer Pratt and Officer Marbury are going to want a word with you once we sort out a few things." She tried to speak. No sound came out. I turned back to my officers. "Quentin, Tasha, have either of you ever heard of an LLC called Magnolia Marketing Concepts?" Quentin blinked. "Sir? Don't worry about it. Drink your coffee. We have about 90 minutes before Detective Brennan arrives with the rest of it." I sat down. I picked up my own cup. The coffee was, in fact, ice cold. I sipped it anyway. It was the best cup of coffee I have ever had. Holland arrived at 5:48 with the arrest warrant, 2 more deputies, a search warrant for the Stansbury Hawes residence 2 doors down, and Deputy D.A. Bryant Coulter. By then, Brittany had been standing at the foot of my driveway for 90 minutes. She had tried, at mine at 8, to walk away. Officer Marbury had stepped down off the porch and politely asked her to remain available until the call was cleared by a supervisor. At minute 23, Brittany had attempted to call her husband. The call did not connect. Greg was at lunch with a Sunfield regional team in Brentwood, and according to the FBI Nashville field office, was at that very moment being approached at his table by 2 federal agents holding a separate federal warrant. I would learn this later. At minute 40, Brittany sat down on the curb. At minute 55, she started crying. At minute 73, the Channel 4 Nashville news truck rolled into the cul-de-sac. 2 of my neighbors are retired journalists. I do not know which one made the call. I do not need to know. At minute 88, Bryant served Brittany Stansbury Hawes with an arrest warrant for 9 state-level counts: theft over $10,000, wire fraud, fraudulent inducement, and, added that morning at his desk, filing a false police report. The cuffs went on her wrists at 5:53 p.m., in full view of a Channel 4 cameraman, 12 neighbors, and her own porch 2 doors down, where the search team was already going in the front door. She did not look at me. She did not say a word. I stayed on the porch. I had decided, hours before, that I would not stand over her at the moment of arrest. Some moments belonged to the deputies. I let Bryant do his work. I let Holland do hers. I let Quentin, who had now been on my porch for 2 hours and was on his 3rd cup of coffee, do his. The neighbors were a different matter. By 6:15, there were 30 of them on Whitehill Place. By 6:30, there were 60. The cul-de-sac is small. People packed the curb on both sides. The Channel 4 reporter, a woman named Jessamine Vance, walked up the front path and asked, with characteristic professionalism, if I would care to make a statement. I considered. I had not planned to. Cops with chips on their shoulder make poor public speakers, and I had a chip the size of a folding chair. But I looked at my neighbors and I saw, in the front rank, 3 of the 12 elderly homeowners who had been quietly paying $35 a month into Magnolia Marketing Concepts, LLC, for 4 years. Eleanor Sutton was the closest. She was leaning on a hickory cane. I came down off the porch in my house socks. I walked to the foot of the driveway. The camera operator framed me against the dogwood. The microphone came up. "I'm Walker Caldwell. I am the Chief of Police of Hartsfield Springs. I have been so for the last 18 months. I bought a house in this neighborhood and chose not to advertise my position because I wanted, frankly, a quiet street to come home to. The camera held me. 8 months ago, the president of this homeowners association came to my porch and offered me a free gas card. I politely declined. For that declination, I have received 19 violation notices, 1 false impersonation report to county sheriffs, a small claims lawsuit, a libelous post in a community Facebook group, and as of 3 hours ago, a 911 call falsely claiming I was an armed and unstable threat to my neighbors. I paused. I refused that free gas card for one reason. I read the fine print. The card was not free. It was the price of admission to a quietly running scheme that has been stealing $35 a month from every household on this street for the last 4 years, including from neighbors of mine on fixed incomes who do not drive at all. The chief of police of this city does not accept gifts from companies he may one day need to investigate. A small ripple went through the crowd. I looked briefly at Eleanor Sutton. Every dollar you have paid into the Sunfield Community Partnership assessment fee will be returned to you. Detective Brennan and the district attorney's office will be coordinating the refund process. To Officers Pratt and Marbury, who saluted me on my own porch this afternoon, when most officers in your position would have asked for ID first. You did exactly right. Your training held. I'm proud of you. I turned back to the camera, and to the HOA president on her way to a county holding cell. Ma'am, you may want to keep the gas card you offered me. It might be evidence at your trial. I walked back up the steps in my house socks. Channel 4 broadcast the whole statement live. The week after the arrest, I made coffee for Eleanor Sutton at her kitchen table, while Holland walked her through the refund paperwork. Eleanor had been paying $35 a month for 4 years and 3 months. The check, when it cleared, was for $1,785. She held it in her hand the way you hold a photograph of someone you love and have not seen in a long time. Walker, she said, I taught you in Sunday school in 1981. Yes, ma'am, you did. You were a quiet boy. You always sat in the back. You always raised your hand last. Yes, ma'am, you haven't changed. No, ma'am, I don't think I have. She folded the check. She put it inside an envelope. She put the envelope inside a Bible on her kitchen counter. She made me promise to come back the following Tuesday for her pecan pie. I made the promise. The legal aftermath unfolded in the slow, methodical way that real cases do. Brittany Stansbury Hawes pleaded down to 6 state counts and served 14 months at the Tennessee prison for women in Nashville. Her Shell LLC was dissolved. Her HOA presidency was vacated by emergency court order. The Hartsfield Ridge HOA itself was placed under receivership, restructured, and its bylaws rewritten to bar any vendor relationship that paid commissions or consulting fees to board members or their families. Greg Stansbury Hawes was indicted federally on 17 counts spanning 4 states and is currently awaiting trial. The federal case has expanded to all 43 HOA contracts the FBI identified. The Department of Justice has called it one of the largest residential data collection fraud cases in the Mid-South in 15 years. None of that has my name on it. That's how I prefer it. Sunfield Energy settled the civil claims for an undisclosed amount. The Community Loyalty Card program was shuttered nationally within 90 days. The refund process for Hartsfield Ridge was completed in 7 months. Every household received between $1,000 and $2,000 back. The widows received theirs first. I took none of the settlement money personally. The amount the HOA owed me for harassment, libel, and the false police report was directed, by my request and by court order, into a new fund my office helped create. We called it the Margot Caldwell Records Transparency Grant. Margot was my mother. She was a small-town Tennessee librarian for 43 years and believed all her life that public information belonged to the public. The grant funds technology and training for small-town departments and county clerks' offices to handle public records requests promptly. 2 grants per year, up to $50,000 each, for as long as the fund holds. Lorraine Pettigrew sat on the first selection committee. She is now retired and has taken up watercolors. Sawyer graduated last May. He wrote his senior thesis on HOA corporate financial crime, defended it in front of 3 professors and a panel that included Detective Holland Brennan, and now works as a financial crimes analyst for the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation in Nashville. He drives down to Hartsfield Springs every other Friday with laundry and an appetite for barbecue. The neighborhood has changed. We have a new HOA president now. Her name is Marlena Wexford. She is 68, a retired federal mediator, and she has not issued a single violation notice in 8 months. The community loyalty card racks are gone from the clubhouse. The $35 line item is gone from our dues. Wendell Cottrell, the retired airline mechanic, sits on the new transparency committee. On the first Saturday of every month, I host an open coffee at the community clubhouse. We call it Coffee with the Chief. Anyone can come. We talk about anything. Eleanor Sutton comes most months. She always brings something. Last month it was peach jam. The month before, it was a pecan pie. If you've made it this far, do me a favor. If you have ever been bullied by a fake HOA, a fake authority, or a fake jurisdiction, drop a note in the comments and tell us about it. Tell us what happened. Someone reading this needs to hear your story. And if you want to see the next case, the one about the HOA treasurer who tried to seize a Korean War veteran's pickup and ended up in federal court, make sure you're subscribed. We post a new story every week. I'll see you on the next one.
What really happened in this story is simpler than the case file makes it look. Brittany Stanberry Hawes did not lose because Walker got loud. She lost because Walker stayed quiet. For 8 months, she counted on the same thing every petty tyrant counts on, that the person she was bullying would eventually break, react, or run. Walker did none of those things. He documented. He filed requests. He let his detective do her job. And when the antagonist finally crossed the one line that no other line could come back from calling 911 on the shape of police, every period fine, every false complaint, every libelous post became evident. The lesson tucked inside this one it was saying out loud. The most dangerous person in any neighborhood is rarely the loudest one. It is the quiet one who keeps every receipt. If you have ever been bullied by an HOA, a fake authority, or a small town queen who confuses control for class, drop a comment and tell us about it. And if you want to see next week's case, the one about the HOA treasurer who tried to steal a Korean War veteran's pickup and ended up in federal court, make sure you subscribe. I'll see you on the next one.